I'm Kevin Devis. This is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm honored to be joined by Father Carlos Zepeda of the Catholic Wire. It's been a while since we've had Father Zepeda on, and it's always an honor and a privilege to have him join the show again, and especially to discuss matters that are important to not just me, not just everyone listening, but perhaps to the entire Catholic Church. And it is the topic that is perhaps at the moment, at least, the most important topic regarding the Catholic Church, and that is the papacy. And this is something that is, people are coming into it. They're probably going to think, oh boy, what is Father Zepeda going to say? And honestly, I don't know what Father Zepeda is going to say. So I'm excited to hear Father's opinion on this. He will be able to give whatever preamble he wants, whatever opinion he wants. Speaking for myself, I greatly admire Father and I respect his opinion. And I'm eagerly awaiting what he has to say on the topic. I want to say for myself in this entire topic before Father says anything. Again, this is just for me, Kevin Devis. I primarily want some attempt at church unity and the idea of talking about these matters further by the clergy. That is my primary purpose. People think I have this opinion in that. I'm not saying anything personally about the council, etc. I just want to have these discussions, and I will do whatever I can to make that happen because, in my opinion, that's what needs to happen. We need to discuss them and make something happen. We need to do rather than to wait. Father, that being said, please, wherever you want to begin, Father, it's a big topic, and it's on everyone's minds right now. So wherever you want to say, whatever you want to begin about the topic of the papacy, what do we need to do to get a new pope, and can we do anything to get a new pope?
hmm So I guess for those who might not be in the loop, we're basically discussing the idea of the Imperfect Council, right? That has been thrown out, and you started in a way to make me feel very, very well. It's like this is important for the whole church, and it's true, it is. But I'm a nobody, so that's what I would begin with. Is the first thing is I'm not a CMRI. I'm not a CMRI spokesman. People a lot of times when I say something, they say the CMRI is saying this. And no, our organization, our congregation, contrary to others, allows priests to discuss freely these matters that are not, determined by the church. And so you'll have priests that have one opinion, others that have others. And I think that's a good thing. That allows us to come to the truth, to learn more. So I'm not a CMRI spokesman. That's number one. And the other one is I'm not an expert. This topic requires a lot of study. Father Gabriel Lavery has been doing a lot of it. I haven't had time to do, all that because I have the project of the Carmelites and many other things. But I'm going to approach this from the level of what I know and just also, I think what I would say, common sense. Let's call it common sense theology. In a lot of problems, it's kind of funny because you have the lay person that just out of common sense, they come to the right conclusion. And then you'll have someone that comes with a bunch of books and research and it's this cobweb that doesn't make a lot of sense. And a lot of times it's just your common sense that tells you. I'll begin very clearly just to dispel any fears. I don't say that we should elect a pope right now. And I think that nobody's saying that. Even the people that are advocating for the perfect council, so to speak, they're not saying we should elect a pope right now. I'll explain that later. We need to discuss if we even can, right? That's the first question. But I think that's the main thing that they're arguing for, and I would say that for us, and that's the part that I would agree with, this needs to be discussed. We need to come to confront the doctrines, to research more, and to see, okay, what is the step forward? There's two things that prompt me to move in that direction. I guess you could say one time I was tried to convert a person. He was not a sedevacantis. He was not in our position, and I was talking to him about everything. And then he said, "So have you guys done anything to convert Prevost or Francis?" And I was like, "No." And then he said, "Well, if you really believe what you're saying, that the Holy See is vacant and that these guys are destroying the church, you've never done any effort to go there and try to, sway them or rebuke them or something?" And I was like, "No." And you're right. You got that right. Like, for sure. That's a good point. We should do it. I mean, the answer of every priest, including myself, would be that's not going to avail anything. They're not going to do anything. Of course, they know what they're doing. But that doesn't take away the fact that I should go and try to do something about it. So that's one thing that moved me a lot. And the other one was actually interviewing Dr. Hiller. Dr. Hiller, one of the big frustrations that he had after the whole effort that he put was that he thought we hadn't done anything, that he felt like the priests and the bishops had isolated themselves into these circles, just kind of like, we're doing our parishes, we're doing our mission, but kind of forgetting of the broad aspect. I don't agree with that necessarily, because they were trying to start something, right? I mean, Bishop Ivarunas, Bishop Maguire, Bishop Dolan at the time, I mean, they were in survival mode. They were they were trying to keep the boat afloat, throwing the water out. That makes perfect sense. But now, I think that we should not forget that part. It's like, okay, we cannot remain in survival mode all the time. We cannot just be happy with my parish and my group. And I'll be very honest. I hope I don't get in trouble for this one. This is a temptation that priests can have, priests and bishops, where once you settled in a very good environment where you have, everything is working nicely, you have a prosperous seminary, you have prosperous congregations and all that stuff. I'm not criticizing the bishops here. I'm just saying that's a temptation that can happen. You come to a place of comfort where now we're living a Catholic life, and that's great. Even faithful people can go through this, right? I'm happy with my Catholic life. I don't want to get into trouble. I'm not going to go and get out of this comfort zone to try to fight for the Vatican and all that stuff. That's a temptation that can happen, and I think we should avoid that. I think we should try to make an effort to step out of our comfort zone and see what else can I do for the whole of the church. Go ahead.
Yeah, someone asked me, Father, fairly recently, and they said, and this was someone who held to the thesis of Cassis Iacum, and they said, so what happens if if that happens, if Prevost just burns all the documents, etc., and is clearly then the Pope? Would you accept him? Would you accept anyone? And at first I was kind of like, that's ridiculous, but then when I really sat back and thought about it, it's like, ooh, that's actually a good question, and I think that's a really fair question that I think Catholics should ask. Every single one, traditional Catholics should really ask, no matter how we get a new pope, if it's through the thesis, which I don't necessarily personally abide by, but okay, if it is, or if it's by an imperfect council, are we going to actually accept what he rules and decides? Are we going to accept if he says, actually, the 55 changes aren't even enough, we need to do more? And I think that's a really interesting question, right, Father? Because I think we're so used to saying, epikeia, right? Epikeia. Yeah, we're going to do whatever kind of. And again, that's being harsh. As you said, Father, I don't mean to be harsh to the bishops. It's a really hard job. But I think that's a dangerous thing. And I think, what do you think that's a case, Father? Is there a time in the next decades where traditional Catholics can actually accept the rulings of a true pope? I think that's a fair question to ask.
It's a good question, and that's exactly what we need to discuss. I mean, these things have to be almost like written down on paper, where we say, this is what we're asking. These are the things that we're asking that we need to have, and if we have them, we can accept that. That's a Catholic pope. To give you an example, this is very real. Let's say that we get a true pope, and I'll explain that in a bit. We'll discuss that. Hey, for those watching the video, at the end of this, I'm going to discuss how the thesis clergy can actually get involved with the Imperfect Council too. That's going to be interesting. They won't be happy, but we need to say, okay, these are the things that we're demanding. These are the essential things, and the other things are accidental. Let's say that we get a traditional Catholic pope, and he does those principles that I will discuss, but he says, hey, we're going to have English in the Mass. We're going to have an English epistle and an English gospel. That would shock a lot of people. A lot of traditional Catholics would not accept it. But I, as a priest, I must say, that's not essential. That's not essential. It's difficult. I would hate it. I would not like English. I would say, like, no, maybe the epistle and the gospel, but nothing else. But you have to admit, that's not essential. That wasn't the essential part. So these are the things that we need to discuss. Or, many other things like that could happen, right? They could say, well, we're going to remove the 55 Holy Week. Okay, well, we need to take that, or not. We're going to keep it. So I'll begin by this. So there's two objections that we can have. One is the world is going to end, and the other one is, we should do prayer, and that's all we should do. And I want to address those very quickly. I'll be very honest again, and I might be wrong.
I'm still here, Father. Sorry, I lost my
Okay.
camera. I'll be right back.
Okay, should I
Go
keep
ahead.
talking?
Yeah, keep going.
I took over. If you were to ask me sincerely, what do you think, Father Cepeda, is going to happen? Like, are we going to get a Catholic Pope in the next 10 years? My thought right now, as I guess, an informed guess, I guess you could say, is I don't think so. To be honest, I think that what we are dealing with right now is the end times. I think we're close to the end times. I don't say that as a sentence. I don't say that's how it is. I'm just saying there's a lot of signs there that seem to show this. And I think that we might get a pope, a Catholic pope, only at the very end when things will be restored. But probably not until more crisis happens. Does that mean we should do nothing? I mean, the world's ending, let's say. Does that mean we shouldn't do anything? Should we not start new parishes? Should we not start new schools? No, that's not how we should do. We should always act. We should always continue doing our duties of a state. If the world was ending a month from now, I would still be doing the Carmelite thing. I would still be doing everything I need to do to please God. I would be planning ahead, even if I know that the world is not going to last another 2 months. So the fact that that we might be, maybe you could say, in eschatological times already, where this process has begun for the coming of Christ, doesn't change anything. We still need to do what's our duty. Similar argument, recently Bishop Maguire, who I greatly respect. I respect all our bishops, and he has always very good takes. I learned from him a lot, and he pointed this out. He said, what we need to do, the main answer to all this is prayer and penance. Totally agree. That's always the answer for all the problems in the church. Well, that's why we're starting a Carmelite congregation, right? I mean, we're trying to do our part on that. But that doesn't take away the fact that a big part of penance is for you to do your duties of state. I can't say that I'm doing penance if I'm neglecting my duties of state. Let's say that I'm a priest, and I say, well, I'm going to do a lot of prayer and a lot of penance, but I'm not going to study theology, and I'm not going to study Latin, and I'm not going to take care of my people. That doesn't work. That's not penance. Bishop Maguire was not saying that. Obviously, he said it. They study the topic and they try to understand it. But I'm just saying, we can't imagine, we shouldn't imagine that prayer and penance is enough and that we shouldn't do anything else. On the contrary, we still need to do our duties of state. I do think that clergy has an obligation to study and discuss this, not just with their group. That's the essential part, I think, that we're missing, because that's what we do. We have good relationships, I think, among the groups, especially among the priests, because we all know we're doing, the best we can to save souls. But I think that's the part that we haven't done, where the clergy actually gets together and discuss things. And I think that's where this is valuable. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
Please.
But I think what's important is to do it in the right way. A lot of clergy don't want to get into that because they imagine a cat fight. That we're going to go into like a room and it's like, and especially if you see X, it's like, yeah, I don't want to get into that live. We're going to have to put like boxing match or something. So it's a lot about, and this is what I want to discuss actually with Bishop Wa and with the Transalpine Redemptorists, because they're a big part of this effort. It's a lot about how you do it. And so to give you an example that I really like, there used to be, there still is the I can't remember the name. It's like the Theological Commission in America or something like that. Like a theological, it's a group of Catholic theologians from the United States. Now it's a mess. Now they're all leftists. But before Vatican II, you read their meetings, and they had a very intelligent approach. Everybody sits down, and there is people that have, conferences. And the priest has a conference, and you can't argue. You're going to listen to the conference, you can ask questions. And then at the end of it, if anybody had remarks or objections or something, you just write it down like in a minute. You know what I mean? So you don't do a live discussion. It's like you allow the person to say their mind, you can ask questions, and then at the end, you put all these matters to be discussed in the next one so that things don't get heated. So I was talking to one of the priests from the Transalpine Redemptorists. They would not be happy if I called them that. And I was telling them that would be a good approach to tell the different groups, you know what, let's do this, we'll do this gathering, and each group gets 3 conferences. You choose a topic, right? That's not quite what they want to do. They want to focus on the papacy issue. That's what they want to do, because they don't want to get in discussions. But some approach like that would be good, where, okay, this group gets 3 conferences, no argument, you be quiet, it's not a debate, allow them to speak, and then at the end you can ask questions, and then after a number of questions, if there wants to be a discussion, people can go to this room to have a discussion about it, and the rest of us can have peace. And if each group has that, here's the advantage of that approach. There is no problem in saying, well, I'm going there, but I don't want to support this group because they're bad. And I don't want to support this bishop because he's invalid and all that stuff. Well, you're not doing that. You're going there to correct them if you want to. And you feel free to go in there, and everybody has a thick skin, and we're going to go and say, this bishop, you don't have valid orders. You need to correct that. You need to stop practicing even if you want to. But as a clergy, we have the duty to admonish someone that is doing something wrong. And so how can we say, well, I'm not going to go to that? You know what I mean?
Well, and I think, Father, that's what I've heard. I hope you hear me on my phone. My camera decided to die. What I've heard primarily against this idea of an imperfect council is not actually the idea itself. It is who is involved. And I mean, that's 95% of what I've heard. So that being the case, I think what you're saying makes sense, where it's like, okay, if you don't like the people involved, then bring your ideas and defeat the people. I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? I mean, defeat their ideas rather than just saying, I don't like so-and-so, so I'm not going to show up. I mean, is that something, I guess, I mean, if you want to answer that, Father, you can first. I guess my question, I think the primary question I have, and I've asked this to several priests and bishops even, who is the Catholic Church? And I think that's, to me, the biggest question is right now, the Catholic Church we know, but from Christ, must exist. And there must be a hierarchy, there must be visibility. And so maybe you can explain that, because I think that's really, really important for this discussion, right? Because I mean, if the Catholic Church exists, which we know it does, who is it?
Yeah. No, and that's actually one of the points that they need to discuss, and they need to, bring into writing. But I'll tell you my opinion. What does your Catholic sense tell you? Your Catholic common sense.
Oh, mine says it's the traditional clergy. I've said that for years. Anyone who watches this show knows that's my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can get lost in canonical things, and you didn't receive the parish in this way, and you have jurisdiction, you don't have jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is one of the big topics that needs to be discussed. But in my opinion, it's like, what does your Catholic common sense tell you? The Catholic Church are the bishops that hold to the faith, that have the Mass, that follow the lawful authority, which is the sede vacantis bishops right now. And they are the Catholic Church. They hold the succession, they hold everything. This is going to blow up with a bunch of priests, and they're going to say, well, where did you get your jurisdiction? Where did you get that? And I'll say this. For me, there's no question about it. If I thought that we are not the Catholic Church, if I thought that we were just outsiders, basically, I don't know what you would even call us, sweepers on the side while the other guys are in the house. I don't know. Are we like the, what are we, right? I believe that we are the Catholic Church, and that the bishop is a Catholic bishop in the Catholic Church, and that we have the power to do what we're doing. If I didn't, I wouldn't practice. If I didn't believe that there is some form of jurisdiction that we hold, and that's something that needs to be discussed prudently. But if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't practice. How could I? How could I come and show up and tell people, follow what I'm telling you, and I'm hearing your confession, and I'm marrying you, and all this stuff, if I didn't believe that I have the power to do that? And I was kind of, I must say, I'll say this, this is a very delicate topic, but I'll just say it. I agree if a priest says, I don't know that I can say that I have jurisdiction, because there's a lot of theological matters that you need to discuss about it. I think it's very wrong when people say, we don't have jurisdiction. We definitely don't. Because then it's, what are you doing? How are you acting? How are you consecrating bishops and establishing parishes? One of the things that they argued against us recently was, the CMRI holds that they have jurisdiction, and they were referring to something I said. Again, I'm not a CMRI spokesman, my personal opinion. But I was giving this example. It's like you have two cops, let's say a nice agent and another one, and they're coming outside of a house, and they're like, we're going to bust in there, and we're going to capture this guy. Yeah, and then one of the guys says, because we have jurisdiction. And the other guy says, no, we don't. But let's go in there and capture the guy. It's like, well, what are you doing? If you have it, you have it. So, but I think that's something that needs to be discussed. You need to back it up. And that's something that this council would be very useful for. I want to say another few things that I think would be useful. So one would be if at the beginning we have like an actual form, like an actual statement saying, this is what you're doing when you come to this meeting. Okay, we're not going to elect the Pope. We're just going to discuss it. You're not approving other clergy that comes here. Actually, you're free to rebuke them and correct them if you want to in the setting that we're giving you. And after this, all you're approving is this meeting right here. In order for the next meeting, there's going to be another session of approval, kind of like a gradual step. First meeting, this is all you're approving. That's all you're agreeing to. That's all we're going to do. If there's going to be a second meeting, then same thing. Here's what it's going to do, and you're free to approve it or disapprove it. And I think that would make clergy a lot more amenable to it, because from the very beginning, you're saying you don't approve maybe of this or that clergy that maybe are not in good standing at your eyes. And from the very beginning, you're saying, I don't approve the whole thing. I'm just approving this first meeting right now because I can see what we're going to do. To this, I can agree. If they take it further, I'm not necessarily vouching for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Father. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's kind of comparable to the Great Western Schism, right? You had a bunch of groups that had to come together eventually to say, hey, look, we've all elected our own popes, and now it doesn't work. We gotta come together, and we all don't like each other. We don't even admit validity, etc. But they still came together, and eventually it kind of elected a pope who then just determined everything, right? Because that's the point, right? Exactly, Father. The point is, so many of these decisions cannot be made because we don't have the authority to make them. You have to have that authority from the Pope to make them. And so I think that's why I like the idea, if you have this council, that, yeah, you can't solve the 55 changes, etc. You have to solve, okay, we had to solve the papacy first, and then the Pope can then determine these issues. And to me, that just makes it kind of like, it makes sense. That it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, that we need the father in the house to say, this is what it's going to be, and this is what is valid and not. And I think there is some precedent to this in history.
Yeah, no, and that's very interesting, the Western system, because that was very uncanonical.
Yeah.
that was not written anywhere in canon law. There was no procedure for that. It was like all very, very much uncanonical. I'm saying it, kind of sarcastically. Because they were applying epikeia. They were applying the intention of the legislator. Obviously, the legislator didn't mean that there would be 4 popes roaming around the world. And so they looked at the spirit of the law, and they followed the spirit of the law to try to solve the problem. But it's kind of like a good example for us because, people need to understand something about canon law. Canon law works in the setting that it has, in the setting that it was foreseen for. And it says it. It says like these laws are made for a certain setting, a certain situation, I guess you could say. But there are settings and situations that are not contemplated by this code of canon law. And in those cases, you go back to church history, to other laws, to the intention of the legislator, to epikeia. So that's a very good example. Do you have any objections about what I've said so far? That would be interesting.
No, I don't at all, Father. I used an example in a previous show where it's kind of like, I think I used the nuclear war. You have it, your entire area gets bombed, and your entire civilization is crumbling or crumbled. It barely exists, and then you're driving on the highway trying to escape an approaching army from Russia, and someone in the passenger seat says, "Hey, don't forget you can't speed. Hey, you're going over 70. No, that's against the law." And it's like, well, no. I mean, like it used to be. I mean, there was a law that you could not break, but now it doesn't exist anymore. And it's exactly as you said at the beginning of the show, Father. It's common sense. Eventually you have to say, okay, what is the primary law, right? And I think that's in canon law, if I'm not incorrect, where it says the primary law is to bring souls to heaven. It's divine law. Divine law is to save souls, salvation of souls, and then canon law has to fit into that law. And if it doesn't, then it can't be the law. And I think that's the brilliance of it. And I think that's where, to me, Father, if anyone ever says you're not smart enough to understand this, it's like, hey, you just don't get it. It's like, well, really? I mean, I don't remember Christ ever. Did Christ say? I don't remember Christ saying that in the Gospels. Guys, I have something to teach you, but some of you here probably won't understand. Sorry, he never said that. That's just it's not how it works.
Yeah. I've said that a couple of times, but no, but I think if you notice what Christ did in the Gospels was at a certain point, he said, okay, you're not going to listen. I'm not, brood of vipers. That's when he used that term, is because, you're not wanting to listen. You're not wanting to learn or discuss this honestly. You're here to trap me, right? That's not his words verbatim, but that's basically the situation. No, and I think, so canon law is not the Constitution in America, right? Canon law is not the higher authority. Above canon law, you have dogmatic theology, and you have moral theology, and you have all these things. And these things actually prevail: dogmatic theology, moral theology, all those things. Canon law has to be under that. And it is under that. So, divine law, obviously. So yeah, this is a situation where that would apply. Now, some people might say, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to elect the Pope. That's not going to happen. And I would probably, I think that's quite likely. But still, it would be very good for us to clarify and to say, okay, these are the things. We're basically in a battle right now, in a war with Vatican II. And as any end of the war, we can see it right now, any end of the war, you have to say, these are the conditions for us to finish, for the war to end. And that's not phrased anywhere. I mean, we speak of what the problem was that started the war, but we've never said what you were saying at the beginning. This is the conditions for us to end the war, for us to be able to be fine. We're battling against something that is not Catholic, against an institution that is not Catholic. But then if someone asks me, what would it take for everything to be solved? We need to have that. And how do you get a pope? Here it is. This is the steps. Will it ever happen? Maybe not, but we know it. We have it. We've discussed it. And that would be a good thing to start with. You know what I mean?
Well, and for speaking for myself, Father, I mean, I as a lay person, just who has no training whatsoever in any of this, I just like the idea that my clergy are trying, and that there's some attempt. And I agree with you, Father. My gut says I will never see it. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what my gut says. My gut says we're generations away, maybe a generation away, because the personalities are too curmudgeonly or whatever. But I mean, I do think it's like I did a show yesterday talking about how you look at the churches here in Germany, Cologne or these other magnificent cathedrals. They started building them with a step, a stone in the corner. And they said, hey, look, I'm never going to see the end of this. I'm never going to see this church built ever. My kids might. My grandchildren, maybe. It might be 5 generations from now. And that's a beautiful idea. But they still did it because they knew this is not for my glory. This is not for me. This is not even for me to see. This is for the glory of God, first of all, but also for the future. And I think, Father, we've lost sight of that in our modern times, where we're just stuck in this idea of, well, what does it do for me? Mm-hmm. Well, Father, what's in it for me? Do I get something for this? Who cares? It's not the point. That is not the point. The point is not me. It is not any individual person. The point is the future of the church. And when I see clergy saying, hey, look, we just want to talk about a solution, that sincerely, it's a boon to my heart. Like, I mean, it's like, okay, look, and I don't know if they're all going to get along. I don't know if everyone involved. I don't know if they're all pure of heart and stuff. I don't know. How could I possibly know that? But the idea that they're saying we just want to talk about a solution, sign me up. Sign me up.
Well, that's it goes back to the thing that I said. Is like, if someone asks me, what have you done about it? I want to be able to say something, not to say like, oh, I've done nothing. Like, I'm just sitting here, giving the sacraments, which is kind of what Dr. Hiller says. You guys are just sitting there giving the sacraments, having mass. And it's like, yeah, that's true. Like, I want to be able to say to people and to God, I did as much as I could. I didn't get anywhere, but I did all my effort to do that. And I have to say here, credit to Bishop Wa and to the people that did that, because they're not taking this lightly, and they knew full well what they were getting into. The people that are promoting this, they know that they're going to be eaten alive by everybody. I mean, it's like, they could have very well said, I'm just going to do my thing and just do my parish and just, live my life, have my car, do my missions, go on vacations once a year. And it's like, no, they actually signed up to this mess, this problem that not a mess that they're doing, but the situation that is terrible, and they're willing to take that by the horns, as they say. And that, I mean, they're intelligent people. They knew very well what it was going to cost them. It's going to cost them a lot of problems, and they're doing it. And when I see something like that, it's like, I don't want to leave these guys alone. I don't want to just. To be very clear, actually, I haven't signed the request because I want to see more of it. I want to see where it's going. That's kind of funny because people thought I was supporting it, like, full-hearted. And I'm like, I'm just saying, like, we need to give them credit and listen, at least discuss it, right? But I want to say this, in all this kind of works, and I think that's very important for them also to keep in mind. And that's why also I'm kind of holding back a little. Not holding back, I'm waiting. In every kind of work like this, you do need to see divine providence act. Like, I would never say, we have the idea, let's elect the Pope and let's go and do everything. No, you need to see divine providence saying, okay, here's this open door. Okay, I'll go through that. And then here's this open door. Okay, I'll go through that. Divine providence gives us the first step, and then we move. Otherwise, you risk doing your own idea and having a total failure and collapse, right? Or making a lot of evil, doing a lot of wrong. So I think that's the main thing. And that's where I see actually here something very interesting, because it's divine providence is acting. There's the idea that the Holy See is vacant and that the council is wrong, the Second Vatican Council is wrong, is becoming prevalent, not just with us, in the Novus Ordo, in groups here and there. I mean, I've met people that are in the Novus Ordo or SSPX, and they agree with our position that there's a lot of consensus now. Not consensus, but there's a lot more of it. And so that is divine providence saying, you need to do more now. There is more. And I think that's one of the things that these guys are doing, these priests are doing, that people don't know. People have the idea that they want to have, like, Bishop Maguire, Bishop Sanborn, Bishop Pivarunas, and Bishop, Davila, and Bishop, all the other bishops, Espina, the ones in Europe, I don't know their names, I'm sorry. And it's like, we're going to get together. And no, actually, their idea is, and we're going to get people from the SSPX, and we're going to get people from the Novus Ordo. They have connections with people around the world. That's their idea, is to bring everyone from everywhere. It's not an ecumenical thing. It's a thing to discuss and try to enlighten everyone, and hopefully we can get to a consensus to say, these were not popes, we need to do something about it. And I think that's, if you follow providence, if the providence gives us the step and then we follow, I think that would be a good thing. Scary, it's terrifying. I mean, I'm, shaking just thinking about it. But it needs to be done. Just because it's scary or difficult, we shouldn't shy away from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Father. And Father, then I guess I'd ask you. I got to get going here fairly soon. And thank you for your time as always. And maybe before the end of the show, we'll ask you how we can support the Carmelites, because that's certainly always an important endeavor. Father, the first thing I'd ask you, I'll ask you two questions. The first one, what would you have to say then to perhaps clergy who are watching this from around the world, who might be on the fence or not understand, or I mean, what do you want to say to them about your thoughts on this entire idea, and really the idea of, I guess, the papacy, and what you think the clergy should be doing, according to your opinion right now?
Well, I'd say what St. Ignatius said at the beginning of the spiritual exercises. He got in a lot of trouble with the spiritual exercises because it was a new thing, and around the time of Protestantism too. So, and he said, the first thing that he says is, you should not judge of what someone is telling you until you've studied it, basically. You need to study it, see with that person what they really mean, because maybe you're understanding wrong, and then you can make a judgment of whether it is right or wrong. So for the clergy, I'm nobody to tell anything to the clergy. I mean, I'm more to learn. What I would ask, humbly, respectfully ask, is that I think it would be very good if we can figure out a way to have meetings, respectful meetings, where we disagree if you want, but just to say, we're okay, let's get together and I can learn a lot from you. You can maybe learn something from me. If someone has problem with their orders, let's solve it. If you shouldn't practice because you're uninformed and you were consecrated a bishop and that's a nightmare, well, we're going to tell you. That's I think what we should do, and let's try to fix the problem. I think there's no reason, there's no argument against that. Again, if from the beginning we say, I don't agree with them, I don't support them, I'm going there to correct them, fair enough. I'll be there. If you tell me that, I'll be there. Maybe I do need to be corrected. So I would say there is no argument against us meeting. And that's, I think, what we should do. We should try to work for that as little or as much or as best as we can. I want to say two things before we go. Go ahead.
Sorry, just one real quick aside. You can give a short answer to this, Father. Do you think that's something that the technology, the modern age, has that kind of made this a bigger issue, where it's kind of like, hey, I can post this on my website or post it to X or Twitter or Facebook, and I don't really have to meet? Or do you think it's probably before that time, but do you think that has any play in this entire issue?
I think just gets things heated.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, I think a lot of clergy can be tempted precisely to that, to the reaction of what's going to happen, which angry ladies are going to come and start commenting in my post, or which angry, old guy in a farm is going to start, blasting me. And they actually worry about that. And I'll say this, another suggestion. If they're worried about that, then let's do it secretly. People won't like that, obviously, but it's like, okay, you're worried about that, then let's have our first meetings without, not secretly, but without making them public, without publishing anything. And we could have that consensus to say nothing is going to be published from this meeting. No one's going to know what was discussed here. This is just between us, just for us to correct each other, etc. Fair enough. I mean, I think a lot of these things, if you say them, they'll say, okay, I'll agree. A lot of them would agree. So two things that are very important before we go. What are the things that we would need to have? Say, these guys were wanting, I was talking to one of the priests and I said, okay, we're going to get all these people together. How do you know? Like, the question is, who should be here? And how do we know the main things that we're asking the Vatican Council to, like, what are the main things that we're fighting? The points that we say that needs to be here. And I would say I would call it the 4 principles. And I think this is what we should actually be divulging with people, with everyone, even the Novus Ordo. The first one is, so faith, commandments, sacraments, and prayer. Faith. Vatican II was wrong. False ecumenism, indifferentism is wrong. Vatican II has to be condemned altogether. Like, the council is not salvageable. It's the whole thing has to be condemned because there was serious error. And if there is one serious error, that's enough to say the whole council should be scrapped, doctrinally speaking, faith-wise. And obviously, indifferentism has to be condemned. When it comes to the commandments, false ecumenism has to be condemned. That cannot happen, and all the people that practiced it in the past have to be condemned. Assisi, all that stuff is wrong, and that has to be totally extirpated from the church. Whoever is in our side, that's what we're asking of Vatican III, let's say, or Vatican. It would be Vatican II, the real one. What we're asking is to say, okay, that sin is condemned. The people that practice it is condemned. No one can practice that ever again. The Catholic Church is the only religion that leads to salvation. The third point would be the sacraments. And with the sacraments is we need to go back to the forms, and especially the consecration of bishops is a problem. Maybe you regard them as valid, maybe you regard them as invalid. That needs to be redone. If there is a new pope, at some point that comes, he has to say, okay, all these bishops need to do a profession of faith, need to do an abjuration of error if they want to, and they need to be reconsecrated by those who have valid orders. That's the third principle. And the fourth one would be the Mass. We go back to the liturgy that was approved before Vatican II, and after that, the Pope might make changes here or there, but the main part of the liturgy has to be upheld. At least go back to what was before Vatican II as a safeguard, and then from there, move on to whatever else. I think those are the four things that we're asking that we need to have, and having that clear, we will be able to proceed and to get people together. And the last thing that I said, how can the thesis clergy cooperate with this? Well, the thesis holds, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong, that the ones that have the power to elect a pope are the cardinals, right? Like the cardinals in Rome. Okay, well, it would be great if some cardinals in Rome can join this effort. If we have some people on our side and there's some people in Rome that are saying, we need to correct that, that'd be great. If we get 2-3 cardinals, then this can actually be a very lawful and canonical council. Thesis clergy, you need to be working your back off to send letters to the cardinals and talk to the cardinals and reach out to cardinals and convert them. You believe they are the solution. That's where you need to be. And we want to see that. If they're the solution, we want to see that. We want to see a constant effort to put a traditional cardinal or to convince them or to convert them. There's no pretext not to do it. If you believe that's what you need to do.
Sorry to interrupt, Father. I couldn't agree more, and I just think the idea, again, being, okay, premise remains. The only difference is that you're not just waiting for God's intervention, that you're actually acting, right? You're actually saying, okay, then fine, I'm going to have to actually go and reach out to these cardinals who I think could have a chance. And if not, again, that's always been my issue. If not, then, okay, then we're just waiting for non-Catholics to become Catholic in a St. Paul moment, which could happen. God can do anything. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, okay, sure. But wouldn't it be more likely if we're emailing them and saying, hey, by the way, you're conservative and do you want the true faith? Do you want an actual Catholic church? Probably not, but maybe, right? And if you actually want that, I couldn't agree more, Father. I love that. I think that's a great end for it, because again, if that's the solution, fantastic. I think you and I would both be like, great, bring in the cardinals. I mean, absolutely, and then everyone wins.
Yeah, we'll have the Imperfect Council, and they will be the division that goes with the cardinals. It's like, but there's something they can do. That's my point. Yeah. It's like, okay, if that's your solution, then get working on that. Try to get them into it. And maybe when the cardinals see, hey, there's all this group here that is wanting to do that, maybe they'll go into it. But there's something you can do always. And if they say no, then the next year you have to write letters again and try again and visit them again and keep doing it, because that's where you believe the solution is. Then you better get working on it. With all due respect, I'm saying that actually, I'm saying it seriously. I think it should be done if you believe that.
I agree. Yeah, not like it matters that I agree, but I love that. I like solutions, and I think that's. I'm all for that, Father. I think it's just like, hey, let's not just wait. Because I think Bishop Bois mentioned that in the podcast he did with me, where it's like, look, we've waited 70 years for a solution, just waited and waited. Okay, God's going to do something. Are we going to wait another 70? I mean, it's like, what is our option? And I just don't think that's how God works. It's not how I see the history of the church. I don't see God just coming in with in the beam of clouds, making solutions. No, he makes solutions through men. That's just how it works. It's just how it's always worked. So I don't really understand why we all of a sudden think that's going to change. Now, we are in extreme times, but that's going to change through God, of course, and I think my opinion is through some great saint or great saints that are going to come and solve these issues. Again, it's purely my opinion, but that will be done through men and perhaps women, who knows? Look at St. Catherine of Siena. Some humble little third order Dominican came and changed the history of the church. And I think that's kind of how I see it. And how can that happen if we don't try? So, Father, I could not agree more. I don't know, but I got one more question for you, unless you have more to say on that matter.
No, but just what you're saying, a quick example. I like this phrase from a movie that I wouldn't quote because it's a bad movie, it has bad scenes in it. But we don't have to win, we have to fight, right? And here's a quick example. You're in your house, the church is our house, and we're in a room where we're very safe. And we know that these thieves are burning down the house. And we say, well, lock ourselves in the room and we'll just wait until they convert. It's like, no, you gotta go out there and do something. Try to do whatever. You might die in the process, but you can't just let them burn your house down. You have to go out and do something. Pray and do penance and pray to God, and then take the hammer and go out there, or whatever it is.
But Father, if they're only materially thieves, okay, I'm sorry. It's a joke. Guys, it's a joke. I'm just kidding. Okay, Father, one last question. What do you think then? What should the laity do? So I asked you your advice for the clergy. What should the laity do? And I think you and I have both seen it again, especially on social media. You might see it in your parishes, Father. You could speak to that. I certainly don't see it in mine. Little tiny church here in Bavaria. I don't think they know anything about what's going on. But what's your advice to the laity? Obviously, I'm sure you're going to say prayer and sacrifice, but is there more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I was going to say prayer and sacrifice. Obviously, that's the main thing. But also, I think the laity can participate in doing humble requests to their priests and bishops. I'll give you an idea. Let's say, and this is kind of like a I don't know, a suggestion that again could get me in trouble. But if you want to be a little bit pushy about it, you can say, well, we're going to get together a group of prayer, and we're going to go and do a holy hour every Thursday for the union of the clergy, and so that our clergy goes and meets with other clergy. And it's like, that's going to be kind of a thorn in the priest's side, a little bit, maybe, with all due respect. But if someone does that, it's like, I can't say no. They're having a good intention. It's not a bad intention, but that's going to be constantly reminding me that. And it's going to be also a good push for me to try harder to do that. Or, I'm going to have masses said every other week or every month, for my priest or for my group to meet with other clergy and try to bring them to the truth or whatever. Prayers, but maybe prayers that are more public and that your priest is aware of, and that you do them even with his consent or even without. They can stop you from doing that. And don't get me wrong, priests are good, bishops are good. I think we all want the same things. I'm not thinking that anybody's like against this, full-heartedly. They are against maybe the time or the opportunity of it or whatever, as it's always been with any council, actually. So priests are good intended, bishops are good intended. I respect them all. As a clergy, make humble requests, but if that is not heard, then make humble prayer for your clergy so that they make the right decision. And that's the best thing you can do. And if that's a humble prayer that is public and that he knows about it, and even other people know about it, and other people are praying, there's nothing that can go wrong. Grace is going to come either to teach you guys that the priest is right in what decision he's making, or to move the priest to make the right decision if he wasn't. So that's I think the best approach we can take. Try not to post in social media or argue in social media about this. You are not the person to do it. Talk to your priest, have the priest do it. And if you want to do it, maybe reach out privately. If there's a priest, you say, Father Cepeda is making nonsense right now. Well, reach to me privately. Don't do it publicly, because that just heats up the environment, and then people can't talk. And clergy can't talk because there is so much noise and so much people, saying that. So let it be. Talk privately to the clergy and try not to, on these topics that is just like the clergy has to do it, let them argue about it. And you voice your opinions privately, discreetly, moderately, in such a way that they don't heat up the environment. I would say that too.
And Father, just to add on to that, just because I've seen it, again, not as an expert here, but I've seen it on social media, that we definitely shouldn't be judging anyone who's not directly on board with this idea as being non-Catholic or less Catholic. I think that's something I've seen. It's just like, guys, calm down. His father said, chill. Just don't even talk about it. Don't even mention it. Go to your priest, talk about it. Ask your priest what you should say about it. Probably nothing. I bet you $10 if you ask your priest, Father, what should I say on Twitter about the he's going to say, no matter what side he's on, he's going to be like, just don't say anything. Just shush. Just leave it. Please leave it. So I think that I love that advice, Father. And I think that's very wise advice. As always, Father, I greatly appreciate having you on. As always, I hope we can do this more. I know you're going to have some changes here coming up. Father, can you, before, actually, real quickly, I think it's going to be posted also on your channel. So if anyone, before I go to Father's, his big project, I suppose, if anyone wants to support my family's new project, it's the Catholic Snail Mail Club. My family is going to be printing out paper material, Catholic material with saint stories, holy cards, etc., sending it to you in the mail. So it's going to be something you can actually hold. It's going to be pretty cool, a really cool project. And you can check that out. Let me check that. Let's see. That is, you can Google it, Catholic Snail Mail. You should be able to find it, Catholic Family Snail Mail, or you can find it at cfsmc.wildapricot.com. You can sign up there, $10 a month for that project. Father, I know your big project is obviously the Carmelite Sisters, and what can people do to help that?
Well, right now, if you know people that have skills, we would really appreciate them. Architects, constructors, lawyers who are in Georgia. That would be very, very helpful. Let us know. We need people that want to work pro bono. And we do have also a page for donations. We are needing a little bit of donations right now. We're actually pretty tight because we kind of pushed through and we're barely surviving there. But I think as the way we're planning things, we will come to a point where we won't be asking for money, and that's a great thing. Like we unless there's like a big project, but we won't be needing to ask for money repeatedly to support the sisters at some point. So I'll send you the links. I actually don't know them by heart. But
is it this one? Yeah, I'm going to throw it on the screen. I don't know if it's the right one. Is that the right one, Father? That's an old one.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just
Virgin Mary of Mount Carmel.org. I'm putting you on the spot here, Father. Sorry, I have it from one of our previous shows.
It should be, and there's also in Give Send Go. Yeah, that's the right page you got there. There should be a donations page there, and in Give Send Go there is a campaign for the Carmelites too.
I'll attach that link then, Father. If you send that to me, I'll send that Give Send Go link in the show notes so that if anyone wants to support that. Again, that's in Georgia. Whereabouts approximately is that in Georgia, Father, in case there are people with skills?
Swainsboro. So that would be like 1 hour west from Savannah.
Okay.
And about 3 hours southeast from Atlanta.
Okay, perfect. Well, there you go. If anyone can support Father and the sisters, we've said it many times, but that's the real battle. That's how we're going to win the battle of grace. And the nuns. I've said that for a long time. And you look at the 1960s and how the whole world fell apart since then. Well, a big part of it was because these orders fell apart, right? The nuns stopped praying, the monks stopped praying. They were pretty much forced to do so, and that's how you win. If you want to conquer the world, if you want a Christendom again, sometime in the next couple of generations, it's going to be absolutely through the prayers of the religious. I think that is, to me, that goes absolutely without saying. So, and as I said in a previous podcast, the kings and queens, they used to literally pay huge sums of money just to build an entire convent, just to have the nuns pray for their souls, just for their souls. It's just like, this is how they thought back then. That's how they thought about things. So remember that if you give huge donations or whatever you can give, then the sisters can pray for you. That's it. That's the game. That's the whole purpose of our lives, right? Just get to heaven. And I tell you, these prayers of sisters, they're remarkable. I've seen them work, and it'll blow your mind. So if you want to get to heaven, I recommend getting to whatever prayers you can from the sisters, because it will help. Father, thank you again so very much. I really appreciate it. I wish the best in all of your endeavors, and I hope we can do this more. I mean, I always love having you on, you know that. And again, until next time, I will continue to pray for a pope, and certainly I will pray for the unity of our clergy. Father, I will leave you with whatever last words you have.
Entrust this to our Blessed Mother and to Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph is the patron saint of the Church. Our Blessed Mother is the mother of our Lord Jesus Christ. Who could have more interest in that if not her? So let's put ourselves in their hands and increase our devotion to her, as Bishop Maguire said. The devotion to the Rosary. The Rosary was the weapon that always solved every crisis. Let's start a Rosary crusade to actually pray the Rosary with that intention, to bring about the unity of the clergy and the restoration of the Church. And I think that's the best thing we can do.
Amen. Thank you very much, Father. Everyone, please like, share, subscribe. Go over to Father's channel, CatholicWire.org, and subscribe there as well. If you're watching over there, come over here and subscribe. You guys know the deal. Comment and share this. Please share it so that people know, they can hear Father's wise words, and also, again, to help support the Carmelite sisters who will need your help at some point, at least in the near future. Father, again, thank you very much. God bless you. Until next time.
Thank you. God bless you.